CNN anchor Don Lemon and another journalist, Georgia Fort, were arrested on Friday on charges they violated federal law during a tense protest at a Minnesota church. A conservative federal judge, somebody who clerked for Antonin Scalia, already had rejected those warrants and wrote that there is no evidence that those two engaged in any criminal behavior or conspired to do so. Then an appeals court held up that decision. Why did you then bring this case to a grand jury after it already had been rejected by multiple judges?
All right, folks, buckle up, because what you're about to see is a perfect snapshot of how the media cries press freedom the moment when their own gets held accountable, but stays dead silent when regular Americans get railroaded by the system. This video shows Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche getting into a heated back and forth with a reporter over the arrest and indictment of CNN's Don Lemon. And trust me, the way this reporter frames the questions tells you everything you need to know about how the corporate press thinks the rules should work. Spoiler alert, rules for thee, not for me. So here's the setup. Don Lemon and another journalist were arrested after participating in a disruptive protest inside a Minnesota church. Not outside, not covering it from a distance. Inside, while families were worshiping, kids were crying and chaos was unfolding. Now immediately, the media line becomes, judges already rejected this. There was no probable cause. This is just journalism. And right away, Todd Blanche shuts that narrative down. Because here's the part they don't want you to hear.
The congregants' reactions were understandable because the experience was traumatic and uncomfortable, which he said was the purpose. Over at Act 21 says, quote, as the operation continued, Defendant Lemon acknowledged the nature of it by expressing surprise that the police hadn't yet arrived at the church and admitted knowing that the whole point of the operation was to disrupt. Why wouldn't a jury at trial see this as a journalist observing what is happening, which is protected by the First Amendment?
Well, you conveniently left out multiple allegations in that indictment about what else Mr. Lemon did, including surreptitiously avoiding saying where they were going, being part of the planning, being part of the decisions to make sure the police didn't know this was happening and federal law enforcement didn't know this is happening. There are multiple allegations there. And guess what? He gets to have a lawyer and he gets to have a defense. And so if he wants to go forward with the defense that, aw, shucks, I was just a journalist, he can do that. But obviously, as the indictment lays out, and which you didn't read on the air, there's a lot of things that Mr. Lemon did that you would never do as a journalist. You would never do that.
Okay.
Let's be honest.
This is not about me. This is about what happened, and this is about kind of the rules of the road. I mean, there are many.
But journalistic standards
let me finish my question. Let me finish my question, and then you have the floor. There are countless examples of when reporters are embedded with people with. DOD, where we are told not to tell anybody where we're going. There are numerous examples of when we get embargoed information that we can't report from your agency, for example, and that has happened on with presidents in both parties, and we withhold reporting it until you say it's time to report it. That's not unusual, and it's not unlike what happened with Don Lemon and Georgia Fort.
Well, listen, you are totally correct that happens every day, and it's happened for decades. But if you watch what Mr. Lemon did, okay, and I do not want to have a trial right here. It's not fair to him. But I will say that if you watch the publicly available live streaming that he engaged in, the comments that he made, I mean, that's what it matters, right? It matters, like, how do we balance the FACE Act? How do we balance freedom of religion, the right of people to worship on a Sunday morning? Okay, and the freedom of the press, and it's a balance that we have to engage in. I agree with you, but my point to you is that I promise you that neither you nor your colleagues can honestly, with a straight face, if you watch everything that he did in the day before with the planning and the day of with what happened when the comments he made while the kids were crying and screaming and racing away while the parents were looking for their children upstairs,
but he doesn't
while they were just trying to have a church service.
Okay. Bottom line question for you is, was this really about what you just described, or was it about trying to make an example out of somebody who the president has sparred with?
I don't even know that the president's even ever thought of Don Lemon. I don't know whether that's true or not. But I will tell you, we're not making examples of people. The day after that happened, the Attorney General flew to Minneapolis. She was there for 3 days. What we saw, there is no scenario under which the American people are comfortable or think that that was right.
A grand jury made up of everyday citizens from the Minneapolis area looked at the evidence and said, yes, there is probable cause. That's how the system works in America. Not Twitter, not CNN, not activist judges. The reporter tries a classic move here. He cherry picks a couple lines in the indictment where Don Lemon is talking on live stream about scared congregants, crying children, and disruption. And then he asks the question the media always asks. Isn't this just protected by the First Amendment? Let me stop right there. The First Amendment protects reporting. It does not protect participation in planning, coordinating disruption, or actively avoiding law enforcement. And Todd Blanche makes that crystal clear. He says, you conveniently left out the parts where Don Lemon allegedly helped plan the operation, concealed information, avoided alerting police, and actively participated beyond just observing. That's not journalism. That's activism with a press badge. Then the reporter pulls another favorite excuse. Well, reporters in bed with the military all the time. We don't disclose locations. We follow rules. Nice try, but that comparison collapses instantly. Embedded journalists are operating with permission under defined rules and not disrupting civilians exercising their constitutional rights. They're not terrorizing families in a church. They're not live streaming kids crying. They're not bragging about police not showing up yet. This wasn't observe and report. This was instigate, disrupt, and justify it later. And this is where the mask slips. The reporter finally asks the real question. Is this about making an example out of someone the president doesn't like? Translation. Why aren't you giving Don Lemon special treatment? And Blanche's response is exactly what Americans have been begging to hear for years. No one is above the law. Not CNN. Not celebrities. Not people who sparred with the president. If a conservative journalist had done this in a mosque or a synagogue, do you think the media would be defending them? Of course not. They'd be calling for prison time before the live stream even ended. Let's talk about something the media desperately wants to minimize. Freedom of religion. These were Americans exercising their right to worship peacefully. Parents try and protect their kids. Families just try and have a Sunday morning church service. And activists disguised as journalists turn it into a spectacle. Todd Blanche says something incredibly important here. This is about balancing freedom of the press with freedom of religion. And guess what? The press doesn't automatically win just because they slapped the CNN logo on the camera. The reason this exchange got so heated is simple. For decades, the media has acted as if journalism equals immunity, intent doesn't matter, actions don't matter, accountability is optional. And now, for once, the DOJ is saying, no, you don't get a free pass. That terrifies them. Because if Don Lemon can be indicted by a grand jury, then the rest of the activist press might actually have to follow the same laws as everyone else. So don't let the media gaslight you. This isn't about silencing journalism. This isn't about political revenge. This is about restoring a basic principle America was built on: equal justice under the law. If you cross the line from reporting to participating, from observing to orchestrating, from documenting to disrupting, then you answer to the law, period. And honestly, it's about time someone said it out loud. If you found this breakdown useful, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video, because the mainstream media sure as hell isn't going to explain it this way. I'll see you in the next one.